In this demonstration, we're going to log on to Server Core and learn a little bit about the command prompt in PowerShell. So, although this looks like a graphical user interface, you will see as soon as we log on to Windows Core, it's very much reduced to literally a command prompt. Now, in this command prompt, we're actually running cmd.exe. So we're not running PowerShell. We're actually running basically what we used to run back in DOS. It's a very simple command interface. So based on this, a lot of the old DOS-like commands, and I say that carefully, meaning I am dating myself, but anything that you would execute at a command prompt typically will work. So if I did any command that I know, like dir to see what was on the directory listing, or cls to clear the screen, they will all still work. Now, the most important piece is to really understand the difference between PowerShell and the command prompt. We're going to spend most of our time in PowerShell, but I'd like to fool around a little bit with it just so that you understand the interface. As I'm sitting right here, I'm going to execute a command called sconfig. Now, we're not actually going to do anything with this command other than showing you that sconfig is an executable file that brings up a menu-based system. I'm going to hit 15, and I'm going to exit, and it's going to bring me back to the command prompt. Again, I'm going to clear the screen. Now, the one thing I'd like you to notice is the commands I'm executing are simple in nature, meaning it's a single word, cls, to clear the screen. dir to get a directory listing, sconfig to start a program. So based on that, when you're at a prompt that shows just a path like this, then you will know that you're at a command prompt, and those are the only type of commands you'll run. If I wanted to, in example, bring up the control panel for date and time, I would type in the name of the executable, and you're going to see that date and time does in fact pop up. So in this case, I can look at Pacific time, I can change a time zone, really make any of these changes that I need to make. Of course, I would have to be an administrator. So commands themselves are single word commands, but when we get into PowerShell, where the real management of the operating system are going to happen, we actually have to start PowerShell. So I'm going to type in the word PowerShell and hit enter. And I'd like you to notice that my prompt has changed. It still does say c:\users\administrator, but there's a PS at the beginning of that line. That means I can now start to run actual PowerShell commands. So in just using the example of the control panel, where I said time and date.cpl, so we'll use the term set-date. Now, I do use uppercase and lowercase. It is not case sensitive, but it is easier to read. Notice there are no spaces. So this is really what we call verb-noun, and that's the pretense of how PowerShell is going to be used. So in this example, it says set the value for the following parameters, and it's asking me for the date. So I'll type it in and hit enter, and it just returns back to me. So command prompt way versus PowerShell way. Now, PowerShell has a whole lot more to it than the command prompt, but I like to make sure you kind of know the difference between the two. I am going to clear the screen. Notice that does work in PowerShell. And let's learn a little bit about how to find some help and what it is we're supposed to do in PowerShell. Well, I can always look for help. So we're going to start off with very simply get help. And when I hit enter, I have a whole lot of help screen, so I'll use the scroll bar to go back up. So this is our help system. Short and long description. How to get online help. Notice I can do get help, the name of a commandlet, and say go find it online if you know that maybe the online version is the most recent. If you want to update help, you can by using update-help. This, of course, requires an internet connection, and it does assume PowerShell 3.0. And we can continue down forward with get help. So I can do, again, get help, commandlet name. So, again, this is going to be a local version, or we have our online version. So I'm going to try get help, And what I want help on is install Windows feature. So notice here we have install Windows feature, and we have to give it the name and then the feature name and then the string. And if we're including subfolders, there's all sorts of different parameters that I would actually use. So I have here example 1, and here's another example. Install Windows feature, configuration file path. We can tell it to restart. We can tell it where the source files are located, so they're all there. Now, install Windows feature also has an alias of add Windows feature. They really mean the same thing. So verb-noun means we have a very small handful of verbs. We have get, we have set, we have add, we have remove. So I'm just going to change the first one, and I'm going to use get Windows feature. Now you'll notice at the top of the screen it does have a different color. It is telling you it's collecting data. So you can see the green is there, so it's telling you that everything is fine. It would be bright red if there was going to be any errors. So with this Get Windows feature, let me go back up to the top of the list. Let's say I wanted to install a Windows feature. So I know that I can add it. We've looked that up, but I don't know what the name of the feature is. So notice here, it's going to tell me what's installed and what's not installed. So none of this is installed. And here are the feature names right next to it. So we have file and storage services that have been added, and this is the name of the feature. So if I wanted to add an example, a DNS server, then I would very simply add dash a Windows feature, and then I would use dash name, and the name would be DNS. So let's give that a try. Now I always clear the screen before I start a new command, very simply so you don't get lost in all of the text of what's going on and you can focus on what I'm typing. Again, I use uppercase and lowercase. It's just easier to read, but it is not case sensitive. And we'll add it in. So you will see right here, there's a warning across the top. Remember, errors are red, yellow warnings. We have the following recommended condition is not met for DNS. There is no static IP. And that's fine. So when you're adding and removing some of your roles and features, a lot of times people are concerned they won't get the help that they need or the information they need on the screen. But you're going to see right here that it's already told us it can't proceed, and the installation is hung up a little bit. It'll eventually come back to a prompt and essentially make me correct the errors. So here, you'll see all the warnings. We don't have the right recommended conditions for DNS. There's no static IP. Again, it's very clear to tell me what needs to be done. If you look down at below, the success is that it's true. It doesn't need a restart. It did install the DNS server, but again, it's giving me all these warnings to tell me that there are other places that I have to go in order to configure the network. Now, we're going to configure the network in a different portion of demonstrations when it comes to server core. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and simply remove the role. Again, just getting you used to PowerShell. So the feature name or the syntax is always going to be the same. It's just what verb you put before it. So we can get it, we can set it to configure it, we can add it, we can remove it. It's changing the verb on the same commandlets. So this will go ahead and do the removal process, and we'll be back to where we started. So here we are. We have removed it. Notice it does require a restart. So from here, we don't necessarily need to restart in PowerShell. I'd like to back out of PowerShell the same way as I went into it. So I just want to show you if I type in exit and you watch the prompt, the PS will go away. And I'm just going to clear the screen. And I will show you that we do have a shutdown command. And we want to reboot it. Now, if you wanted, you could do /time and the time to execute the number of seconds. Now here, I don't necessarily want to postpone it for a couple of minutes, so I'll just go ahead and say reboot. Notice we'll get a little warning. And it will go ahead and restart and bring us right back to where we are.